Welcome back to the Context Coaching Podcast. We are here today with Sara Shaughnessy, Athletic Director at Castilleja, just south of the city, north of San Jose. Coach, appreciate you coming on today as you step into this new endeavor.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, let's dive in. So take us through the journey. How did we land in 2025 at Castilleja? What were all the steps before that? How did you get here? Where did this whole thing start?
I think it started honestly when I was a kid and I was raised by a single dad. And if you didn't talk about sports around the dinner table, you didn't speak at all. And I like to talk. I'm an extrovert. So I would wake up when he left for construction in the morning and watch Sports Center in the morning. And so sports was just always such a big part of my life. It's who I was when I grew up. I played competitive volleyball and ran distance as well. And it just really turned me into who I am today. It taught me so many life lessons. And as you go about your life and you have to pick your career, I wasn't ready to give up sports. I wasn't tall enough to play in college. I chose to go down this path in kinesiology. And then I started coaching and I never looked back. So, coaching club volleyball and then high school and with volleyball and track and field, that just really changed something for me. And I loved that I could be a positive part of someone's life and change their day for the better every single day. And so then I got into athletic directing. I went to USF for their sport management program, got into athletic directing. I was at the International School of San Francisco for 13 years. I started off as a assistant AD, then associate AD, and then for 8 years, the athletic director there. And yeah, it was a great ride. I loved it there, learned so much as a person and as a leader, and had so many amazing mentors and friends along the way. And now I'm trying something new. I'm at Castilleja, an all girls school. So, really going back to what got me into coaching in the beginning, which was empowering young women. I'm so excited to be here and to try something new, and also a little nervous at the same time to leave somewhere that felt like home. But so far, so good.
Yeah, no, when you take that leap of faith, right, there's an opportunity to reflect on how you've been doing things for 8 years and reinvent yourself if needed, or take the best things that you did and meld those with the best things that the new site did as well, right? And so it's a great opportunity, as scary as it might be. Can you go back to your transition after college, right? You got into club volleyball, it says, then high school sports. Where was that? What was that experience like? Did JV right into varsity coaching? I just want the landscape before I ask some follow-ups.
Yeah, I started coaching my sophomore year of college at SF State. I got introduced by a classmate who was also coaching, and got brought on to do assistant coaching at like a 12 and under team because it was my first gig. Just let's give her the little ones and see how it goes. And one thing led to another, and they didn't have a head coach, and they were like, "You can do it." So they threw me into a 13-1's head coach position. And then I coached head JV at high school, at University High School, and also helped with the varsity team as well. So I got thrown in right away to head coach position. And then from there, I've always been a head coach. I never stopped. I don't know. I guess I'm just a boss like that, but no, not actually. But it just worked out that way. It just worked out that way.
So good. That's so good. It's funny to me as well because ultimately I went from being an assistant manager and then an assistant coach at the college level to a high school head coaching job. And then did that for 9 years, left and tried to retire, and then got sucked back into being like a JV and a seventh grade coach for a year, and then moved again and tried to be retired, and you just keep sucked back in. And I've been like a casual assistant, right, as the AD, where I'm an assistant with everybody, whether they want me or not. And then, but basically, similarly, my experience is more as a head coach. So all of that to say, when you became the head coach at the high school for the first time, if you can remember that long ago, what did you realize right away that you needed to figure out? And the reason I do this is, especially as a longtime athletic director, is our coaches that are being asked to coach our teams, especially at the independent school, right, don't necessarily have the same background and network that we do. So how do we provide a digital database of mentorship? And here are the things you're going to face. Here's what you need to be ready for. And I just try to like cultivate those into this database of, yeah, like I didn't know anything about this. And so one of my good buddies who's the AD at Northern California Powerhouse, his answer to this was staff and schedule, staff and schedule. These are the things you got to figure out. And I don't know if that was your experience, but I'm curious.
Yeah, I think for me, I've always been a people focused leader. For me, one of the things I had to learn really early on when I was a head coach and getting thrown into it was finding that balance of making sure that my players respected me because as a woman coach, and at this time I was a very young woman coach, to make sure that they did respect me, but also not lean too hard so that they went in the other direction and didn't want to listen to me because they couldn't connect with me at all. So really finding that balance of being firm but also caring, and making sure that your players know that you're going to hold them to a high standard and you still care about them as people first. That's the first lesson I learned when I was a coach, and it's a hard lesson to learn. I remember I was way too tough on a team that shouldn't have been too tough. I think I yelled at a lines judge that might have been like 13 years old in one day. And but just learning that, having more perspective and stuff as a coach, and it might be a bad game or it might be a bad day, but it's not a bad season. It's not a bad career, to have that perspective. So I think those lessons are what I took with me my first go at it.
Yes, to all of that, right? Accumulated wisdom allows us to have better perspective, is my takeaway from that. And what would you say, right? So 13 years as an AD in some capacity, right? Assistant associate and 8 as the director. What would you say thematically are the things you most find yourself helping your new head coaches to figure out, right? So that was your experience, but what are the ones that you're constantly dealing with from the other lens where it's, I can't believe they don't know how to do this or something along those lines? I'm just trying to help coaches as they onboard. I've got a new volleyball coach, and it's like, how much information can I give her that's not just from me?
Yeah, I think it's going to be different for every coach, and that's hard to give a blanket answer. I guess I'm in that same situation right now, to be honest with you, Justin. I on week 3 walked in the door and my current associate AD and head water polo coach came in and said, "Hey, I actually just got a new opportunity and I'm leaving. And by the way, tomorrow's my last day." And we
Yeah, I
start
love that. I got one of those last week too.
and we start sports in 4 days, 4 working days now at this point. And so really having to pull a rabbit out of my hat. I don't know if you know any water polo coaches that are great out there and available at 2 o'clock in the afternoon every day and growing trees and have good standards and values. But it's really hard to find good coaches and ones that are available for our kids at these times of day. So I luckily had some resources and was able to have a candidate come in and meet with me and the team. So we're hoping to onboard her, and she's green. She's never coached a high school team before. She's coached club, but school's so different. There's that culture embedded in it. There's the social intertwinings of a school. So really what I was talking to her about was making sure that first of all she understands the culture of what she's walking into, because if your expectations are A and the culture and the team's expectations are B, they're never going to come together. And so understanding what you're walking into and setting goals together. So I always suggest to my coaches, whether they're new or not, is to understand their players and to make sure that the goals are aligned. So making sure that you take that time to get to know them as people and then aligning the goals. So that was my advice that I gave her. And then also just as much as you can go into it with an open mind. I try to not give my head coaches too much information about the students or what I know. Obviously, hey, maybe lean on this student because she was the captain last year. She's going to have a lot of institutional knowledge. But at the end of the day, I want the coaches to make their own determinations and their own opinions about their players and have their own lived experiences lead that. I listen a lot and I ask them a lot of questions and I see what they need from me. And I leave every single meeting with my coaches, whether they're new or not, with what do you need from me in this moment? And then I always make sure to get it done. That's what I do with new coaches and with veteran coaches. But with the new coaches, I might check in a little bit more.
No doubt. All right. You started at Castilleja at some date, obviously, probably July 1, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, that your whatever that date might be. And what have you done since that date to address exactly what you just said, right? Meeting with your coaches, getting ramped up, trying to onboard yourself with them, with what you can learn about the school. What has that been like? What have you done to this point, and what's still on the list that needs to be executed sooner than later?
That to-do list gets longer and longer every day. But
Always.
yeah, so it's week 4 now. And so I started July 14th. And at my new school, Castilleja, they have put me on leadership teams. So I am in the same room with all the decision makers at our school, and I feel really fortunate that they value athletics and I'm able to be in that room. Because let's be honest, athletic directors work with every single person, every single department on campus and beyond. So it's great to have that partnership in a school, and the fact that they trusted me to do that is a privilege, and I don't take that lightly. So a lot.
Before you get off that, was it a senior staff level job before you got there?
It was not. No.
Good to know, just out of curiosity. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So this is something new. They did a big search and they want the athletic department to be 6 through 12. So it was a little shift in structure
Yeah.
at the school.
For those that are
Uh,
unfamiliar, the at independent schools, the senior staff is the executive team. So head of school, dean of students, business office, development director, admissions, etc. And to have athletics be part of the senior staff, I don't want to say it's abnormal. There's a handful of schools that do it, but it's not normal. So it's probably 20% do that, 20% don't have them involved in anything other than like coordinating, and the other, whatever, 60%, it's like it would be at the public school.
Thanks for that context. Yes. I've been in this world so long that sometimes I forget how different it is from a lot of other schools. So great context there. But
So
yeah,
the
the first
list,
thing,
right?
yeah, the
Yeah, get
list.
into it.
Yeah. Oh man, you brought that up again. So really what I was doing is getting to know my leadership team and my direct team in terms of my coaches. So I immediately reached out to our coaches and I set up one-on-one meetings with our fall head coaches. And if their assistants were available to come, great, awesome. And then I've already had my group meeting with my coaches where I invited all the coaches 6 through 12 to come, but made it mandatory for the fall coaches to come from 6 through 12. So we just had that big meeting on Wednesday night, super fun. But the things that I had to do day one is create a handbook. I came in and there was a skeleton of a handbook. I think it had 5 pages on it, and it still had an athletic director's name from 5 years ago on it. So came in and turned the 5 pager into 30 pages and made sure that it was just really consistent with the school, and made sure that I read the school's page cover to cover every single page to make sure that they're consistent because I'm
Which is
still
probably
learning.
the first time it's been read in years.
Maybe don't tell my upper school head that though. And so yeah, and then did the same thing with middle school because their handbook's going to be different, right? Like the we approach upper school athletics a little differently than our philosophy in middle school. So doing copy and pasting, but also changing it to be appropriate for the ages. And then setting up a spirit store. We hadn't had one at Casti before, or not in recent memory. And so working to set up a spirit store so families could show their pride. And one thing that I really want to bring to this new school is school spirit. And that's something I'm really proud that I was able to, with the help of others, get going at my previous school. So I really wanted to bring some of those things here. I'm also in the works of redoing the mascot costume, which is really exciting. And I think that will do a lot to pump up the school spirit. And then it just, the list goes on and on. I've met with our parent liaison group several times. I've worked with families in different capacities just to get to know them. But really, the first month and a half, maybe even the first couple months, is just going to be getting to know my community and my people. Like I said, I'm a people first leader. So a lot of meetings, a lot of getting to know people, a lot of learning where to go. And now with that curveball that I was thrown at the beginning of the week, my learning curve has had to get a little steeper, especially in terms of operations. I didn't think I was going to have to do as much of that in the beginning. And now I have to make sure that's my focus just as much as the people facing stuff is.
That's great. And what adversity strengthens probably was more beneficial for you to have to deal with this than not. You mentioned some of the things you did at your previous school and that went well. So I'm curious what you think, either personally, right, as the departmental leader at your former school and coming into the new school, or even just observing your coaches and what they've done over the years. And I'm always trying to find nuggets to share with other people that they can implement and find a good return on investment of time. So the questions, what's the best thing you do in your program that has the largest ripple effect on culture? But it doesn't necessarily have to be yours, right? It can be something that you saw one of your teams do that you vowed the next time I go back to coaching, hey, we're doing this because it's so transformational. So I'm always just interested in gleaning a couple ideas that we can throw out there for the universe. What do you got?
Yeah, I think. At my previous school and here at Cassie too, we are so lucky that we have a pipeline. So at my previous school, we started athletics in fourth grade. So it was 4 through 12, and the retention from middle school to high school was pretty high. So you knew that you're going to get some students from the outside that are brand new to your school, or that you might be able to get there with admissions to your school. But for the most part, you have homegrown talent. And so that's such a big opportunity. And if there are coaches in that situation where they're able to tap into their lower school, their middle school, and have a top down type of coaching, that was always my most successful programs. We did that with volleyball on both the boys and the girls side. We did that with, to some extent, with soccer on the boys and the girls side, and then basketball on the boys and girls side as well. And it's really important to have a consistent voice that students are hearing scaffolded differently. You're going to teach a 4-year-old something different in basketball than you are going to be teaching a varsity athlete performing at a high level. But if they're hearing the same things, if they have the same cultures and the same value, and it's really perpetuated from top down, and maybe some of the coaches are the same, if they have the availability, and if not, they're meeting with the head varsity coach to make sure that the playbook looks similar, and the playbook, like the actual playbook, and the team culture type of thing, championship culture. It's so important. Those were the best things that I saw. And it's hard and it takes a lot of time because it's a commitment, and it's hard to make sure that you're scaffolding things appropriately. And it pays off in dividends. So yeah, so our boys basketball team last year actually ended up going all the way to the state championship and winning after being down at halftime by 9 points. And I really feel like when I looked out at that court at Golden One Center in Sacramento and I saw them playing, I saw kids that I knew since they were in fourth grade and beyond. And most of our starters and the ones off the bench, we had a couple kids come from out the outside, but most of them were homegrown. And so just knowing that they had built that relationship with the coaches and with our staff for so long, it meant even more. And I think they were locked in and ready to play harder for each other because they had that commitment to one another.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's unique when you get that opportunity. Either you're a smaller town and it's a one school setup, right? Or you're in Clovis, which is basically Texas, and they do things differently, right? But for the rest of us, it's very rare that you get that experience where your lower and middle school kids matriculate with enough talent to be the core of a team, right? You're usually dependent on the outside kids coming in to supplement or to play more featured roles. But that's really cool. All right, I want to go to this other piece because I'm sure it applied at both your old school and at Casti. Is the school small enough where you need your kids to do everything? And you mentioned that you were a volleyball athlete, you were a distance runner, you coach multiple things. The modern world is trying to drive a stake through the heart of multi-sport participation, and it's ruining athletics. And I'd love to get your take on how you kept your best athletes involved. Maybe you didn't. I'm assuming that all athletic directors need to do this, but I just think it's a fight that if we don't dig into head first, we're losing. And so I'd love your take on that, how you fight back against sports specialization and how you message to these kids and families who are getting a whole lot of misinformation from the outside world that they have to be specialists.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is something that's really hard for us in youth sports right now and in high school sports because there are so many pressures on our students, and they are getting pressure from everywhere, and it's really hard. And I acknowledge that for our high achieving students for sure. I think there's a group of students where they should specialize, like honestly. And if they're at the top 1% of what they're doing, they're trying to play at a high level in college, they're getting recruited. I think they probably should, in a safe way, not overtrain, but in a safe way, definitely focus and specialize. That's maybe, I don't know, 1 out of 100 students that I'm dealing with. Maybe in some school years, maybe 5 out of 100 if we're extremely lucky. But the other 95 out of 100, I think that it makes them a better athlete in general. It certainly did for me when I was playing volleyball. It really taught me how to play and learn and do things with a group and collaborate. Even when you didn't agree with someone, you still had to bite the bullet and figure it out. And you did it because you all had a common goal together and you were better together. So learning that skill in high school was really strong. And when I went to go do cross country and track and field, it was just me and that stopwatch that I was competing against most times. And learning how to goal set, learning how to push through your wall, learning what your boundaries are and where you can go is something that's also really powerful. So I feel like as an athlete, I became who I was and learned so many things because I was in a team sport and an individual sport. So I'm always encouraging my kids to try something new. And I think that's where it comes from is trying something new. It's really hard to put yourself out there, especially as a teenager, and be vulnerable and try something new and not be good all at first, especially if you're in high school. A lot of times people have already tried something. So I guess to answer your question is how do we promote multi-sport participation? I think it's creating an environment where you can do that if you have the resources. I was really fortunate when I was at international, inclusivity was a school value. So they never wanted to cut anyone, even if it was a senior coming to play a sport for the first time. They were like, we need to find a space for this person and make them feel valued on the team. They don't need to play. Of course, we still need to win, but they do need to be a part of the team and need to be valued. And having an environment where someone could come and try something as a 10th grader, as an 11th grader, if they were really brave, maybe a 12th grader. But that was really important to us there. And that was really nice because our participation increased from, I think when I first started, it was like 46% of our student athletes were participating in at least one sport. And then when I left, it was up to over 70%. So people really felt like they could come and do that. And we had so many multi sport athletes. We gave out a Triple Crown award every year at the banquet, really nice plaque with that. And I had 28 at my last school, and that's out of a school of 350 kids. So that's a big ratio there. So I think that's good. And I also think it's really important to have opportunities for sports that haven't really gotten into the club scene yet. So, for example, flag football for our girls is huge right now, and it's so new and it's so exciting. And the barrier to entry is a lot lower than it could be for a sport that just has been already taken over by the club space. Also, if you have the resources and you're able to have these new sports that are really exciting and popular to offer those and inspire the students to come and try something new.
Yeah, and I think that's my challenge, right? It's there is a belief system out there that you and I know is not accurate. And I don't necessarily agree with you that 1% should be doing this. And that's based on data that I have from our situation, where ultimately, since 2017, we have 83 kids playing college sports. We had 17 this last year. And the data that I have basically says that of those 83, 20 were single sport kids. And of those 20, 10 of them were sailors and golfers. So I just throw those out. Those don't count. And then the other 10, because like golf's unique, you know that, right? It's a different deal. And sailing is also like most sailors, it's a year-round endeavor. You don't have any other real option because of the transport and all that. We don't need to get in the weeds on that. But of the other 10 that were single sport kids, only two of those 10 that went to the college level like finished their careers. The other ones were all done early. And so it's what does the math tell you? It tells you that 63 of the 83 went on and had lucrative college careers, and the single sport kids, in theory, didn't shake out the way they had hoped. And I don't know what your data suggests, but that's mine. And I'll beat that drum till I'm dead because we need to. And I'd say same thing. What did you call your three sport award?
Triple Crown.
Yeah, and we call it the Iron Pirate, where 4 years, three seasons a year. And we had 12 this last year. We had seven the 2 years before that. And I've got buddies at other schools that have 3,000 kids that haven't had a Triple Crown or an Iron Pirate for since 2017, which is wild to me.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you got 3,000 kids and you don't have a single kid that played 4 years of three different sports. It's wild. But I think also it's not as wild if you think about because they have so many kids, they end up specializing, and you can't make a particular team if you don't do it year round, which I think destroys the joy for kids. But I'll get off this. People who listen to the pod know I'm on this all the time. But let's stay on this on a different angle. What have you been able to observe? Because let's say as a basketball guy, all I do is go to basketball clinics. I'm missing 24 other opportunities to learn and get better, right? So I make it a point that I'm always watching these other sports and seeing what I can steal. What have you seen walking around as the AD and observing where it's like, hey, you know what? The tennis coach just did this. You might want to consider some version of this for your own team.
One thing that I took from some of my coaches recently actually was promoting more play in practice and getting away from structured drills, of course, are always going to be there and they're important, especially at the lower levels. But when you get a group that's pretty talented and they're there and offering an opportunity for them to have more opportunities to have live play and practice. And I remember when I was first starting coaching, I was so organized. I had my practice plan, I was ready to go, and I had it by minute. And sometimes my practice plan wouldn't go the way I wanted to. And that really flustered me as a coach. And that was really hard. And I've learned to have a loose idea of what to do, but it can go wherever it needs to go. And you have to be a little bit more fluid. And so I would always leave time at the end for scrimmaging, but sometimes we wouldn't get to it because I had these other drills. And I want to go back in time and do it the opposite way and almost start with the scrimmage and make sure that we had enough time for that. Because I think that the teams that I see and I observe that are doing the best in game situations are able to play in more open skill situations in practice. So I think that when I see a coach or I see a team that's doing too many drills, or if a student comes to me and said, I love my experience, I'm definitely getting better, but I just want to play more in practice, I can lightly give that feedback to the coaches and just say, hey, just try it for a week, maybe two, if it's going okay. I know you like your drills and I know that they still need to learn this very specific sport skill, but just try it and let me know what it looks like and what it feels like. And what usually happens is if a coach is resistant to do that and they try it for a week or two, they just see the mindset and practice shift. They see the enjoyment so much higher. And they see in the game situation, maybe it doesn't look as pretty, but they get the job done because they've had a lot more opportunities to practice those open skills together. And so I think that's also a pretty valuable skill and something that I've taken from the most successful coaches that I've worked with.
Yeah, we had a buddy of mine came in and spent 3 days with our basketball teams 2 or 3 years ago, and his take was similar. Whereas, what do kids want to do? They want to play. So like he would just come in and we start 5-on-5 right from jump, and it was I thought so impactful that I started similarly asking our other coaches like to the extreme where I'm talking to my football team. It's like, yo man, when's the last time you just played 11-on-11? What? You don't do that? It's like, yeah, like just have the kids call plays, let them figure it out, get out of their way. And now we don't do that in football. It's okay. Maybe you should try. But yeah, I'm with you on that. It's great. All right, let me go to this other piece where you mentioned taking this new job. You're 4 weeks in. You've been at the other place for 13 years. You went to San Francisco State, master's at USF, whole life essentially as an adult in the city, and now you're city south. It's not extremely far away, but it's a risk, right? You're going into the void. Talk through that process. Why did you decide to explore something? What was it like? How much hesitation did you have? How would you share wisdom you've gleaned with others that might be at a place where maybe they need to look somewhere else?
Yeah, it was a big decision for me and my family. It's not just me making this decision, it's a family decision. And by the way, we still do live in the city, so it's a pretty big commitment and commute every day. It's about an hour plus. But yeah, but I have two kids and a husband, and it was a big deal. And so much of my professional life was wrapped up in international, and I have so much love for that place. So I'm definitely, when I left, it was a positive thing for sure from both sides. I felt very supported. I had been there for a while and I feel privileged to have the support from the school to build a program that I was really proud of. And we weren't perfect, but from where we started and where we finished, there was a lot to be proud of. And some of that's on the scoreboard and hanging in the gym, but most of it is in the feeling of the hallway and the fact that school started off athletics was a side thing. I joked that it was like a dessert on the menu, and sometimes people really were excited about the dessert on the menu, but a lot of times they were too full with other things to even look at the dessert menu. And when I left, I felt like athletics wasn't just on the dessert menu, but it was like on the featured items on Yelp at our school. And I was really proud of that because athletics wasn't just about those on the court or the field, it was also about the people that supported them. So building that school spirit was really important to me. And so feeling like you had built something and feeling like you were really proud and happy about things were going, this opportunity came to me. It came across my desk as some best opportunities do. And I wasn't looking and it just came. And I said, why don't I just try? Why don't I just have a conversation? And then when I got into those initial conversations, I really fell in love, like I said, with the mission and the purpose of the school, which is empowering young women through leadership. And that just spoke to me. And then going through the process, I actually almost pulled my application because we were in the middle of March and I had my semifinal interview with Castille a day before the state championship. And we didn't just go to the state championship. We actually stopped school and we brought our entire school, sixth grade through 12th grade. It was like 10 Rooter buses all the way to Sacramento. We canceled school, had a pep rally, we had a news crew. We had an entire huge section in an NBA stadium dedicated to just our school. So it was an endeavor to plan with 48-hour turnaround. And then I had the semifinal interview in the middle of it. And I honestly, I really almost pulled my application because I was like, I just can't do one more thing right now. I am just working both ends, the candle's burning at both ends. But I did it. You put on your game face and you do it. And then after the semifinal interview, I was like, this is a place I really want to go to and I want to grow and I want to learn. Because I feel like even though there was a lot of success going on here or at International, I was becoming complacent professionally. And I didn't want to do that anymore. And so I wanted a different challenge and I wanted to learn. And I loved that Casti Athletics was on that leadership team. It really spoke to me that they valued athletics as a whole. So yeah, it was a risk. It was a risk. And I feel like I jumped into the deep end, but it is one that I feel good about. Still week 4 and still feeling really good about it. And it was scary, but we tell our students all the time to lean into growing their comfort zone. And who am I to just sit there and be complacent when I'm telling them to be brave and them to make mistakes and them to be okay to learn from life experience and me not do it myself. So I feel like I'm taking my own advice as a coach and as an AD.
No, absolutely. And I'd love for you to talk about what you take out of that exploration in the event you don't get the job. Because I think us and our colleagues and our friends and our family and many other people often talk ourselves out of exploring rather than get in the mix and see what comes out of it and not necessarily be attached to outcome. Going into one of those processes is an opportunity to validate what you're doing or to find your blind spots. So what would you say you took out of that had you not gotten a job, and why is it valuable for people to explore? Not that they're necessarily trying to leave. There might be something else out there that's a better fit.
I think even especially as a woman leader, I did have that imposter syndrome and I'm looking at that job description and it was pretty hefty. And I was like, gosh, I don't know if I'd be the right person for this. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I could start something all over again. Maybe the magic was just at this one place, or maybe it was just the right time, or I got lucky or whatever. And there's so many different things in your head that's telling you that. But I went into the situation with nothing to lose. And that is a very privileged place to be. I want to recognize that. I really enjoyed my previous job and I really enjoyed that community. And so if I didn't get this job, then I just looked at it as good practice for public speaking and good practice for talking through my values as a person and as a professional and as a leader. And I went into it with the I can't lose mindset because I felt like either option, I stay at my old school or I get this new opportunity, was a win for me. But again, that's a really lucky place to be. And I don't take that lightly at all.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think, yes, and there's a certain aspect of, look, you earn the right to be lucky. So let's not dismiss that either, right? It's my daughter just graduated college, and her best friend is the daughter of my colleague and friend here. And I'm trying to life coach both of them about having a lot of irons in the fire and having options. And it's, I'm deep on with this one. So let me wait. And it's no, what if you don't get that one? Right. And so we're going through this conversation around you can never, ever have a big enough network. You can never have too many lunch meetings to just ask questions, right? And I think let's not dismiss the fact that you had job security for a reason and you're getting recruited by others for a reason. So I think that's important. And I think what you said is you can learn a lot, not just about public speaking, but your own philosophy. Like in 13 years, right? You said complacent. When's the last time you actually went back and put it down on paper at that school? Probably never. And so it's okay, how do I redo this? And I think that's the power of exploring. And when I left Sacramento 17 years ago, I interviewed at 2 places initially Left one, I don't want to be here. Left one, it'd be really cool to be here. And ended up at a completely different place that came out of the woodworks just because I was now in an exploration mode that I wasn't thinking I was trying to get into. So, anyway, just putting a pin in that, I just think it's important that people are constantly getting educated. And sometimes the best way to do that is to talk to people that do your job somewhere else. What would you say in regards to early on? You say you know what you didn't know, you're a little harsher on people than you needed to be, and now you've obviously evolved and you're not necessarily coaching a team right now, but you're in a situation where you're onboarding people that are at different phases of the wisdom experience. How would you elevator pitch that idea of like where you are now as a coach or an AD versus where we were when we were younger? Like, why does it matter? And how do we help our earlier inexperienced coaches get to this side of things as fast as possible?
Yeah, I love working with younger coaches. Honestly, I think that there is a superpower in their novelty to the world of coaching, and they might bring some really fresh ideas that me as an older coach would be stuck in my ways. And so I think that we just have to lean into that and give the coaches their individuality to an extent, as long as they understand the culture and the values of the school and everything and the program. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just check, honestly, like I don't even know if I would give an elevator pitch, because I really want to see where their skill set is, where they thrive, and really lean into that. And I am just really present with those coaches as a leader, honestly. Like I just think it's really important. And I guess if I were to give them an elevator pitch, it would just be lean on me, lean on this coach. We're here for you. And this coach might not be in that sport, so maybe can't give you ideas about the opponents, but they can give you ideas on how to manage a big roster. Or if this pops up, you're just not alone. You can always ask for help from someone. And if you're a newer coach, find those other coaches in your network that you can lean on for sport specific things. And also just lean on your athletic director, your associate athletic director, those people, because they really do want to see you succeed. They want to see you do your best. And so even if you think it's a trivial question or something small, just lean on your leaders and your network, like you were saying, Justin. Make sure you get a little bit of a network there and spin ideas off of there. Also, it's okay to make a few mistakes. It's okay to make a mistake once and then learn from it. That's fine. Now, if you make the same mistake 20 times, we might have a problem, but it's okay to make a mistake once and learn from it and move on and accept that you made a mistake. But really, if you have a question, if you have a tricky situation, don't feel like you ever have to go into it alone.
And that's hard, being vulnerable enough to ask for help, right? And acknowledge that you don't know things. And most of our coaches, right, from their athletic career, you feel like you've learned enough. And look, the most powerful thing we can all say is, I don't know, let me go figure it out and get back to you. And that's hard to do, especially when you're on the front end of things and you feel like you have to validate your experience for whomever happens to be asking. So I love that. Let's pivot to AD specific things. What's the best tool you've adopted over the last few years that you would offer to others in regards to making your life easier or more efficient, if not easier?
I think that the best tool that I initiated was like, and this is, I don't know if it's efficient, but it's cut like big headache problems in to like very minute things for me lately. And that's just like having a very comprehensive feedback pathway for my coaches. And I'm really proud of that. And I'm excited to institute that here at Casti. And so, yeah, so we start the season off with the preseason meeting. Oftentimes that's together. And I love that coaches can learn that even though it's golf or flag football or cross country, like they have so much similarities and they do have differences. So you can tap into that coaching network when you see each other across the campus or whatever. So we all meet together, and in that meeting, I always ask for goals, and I keep those goals with me. And I ask my coaches for two goals for the program or for their team, and then one goal for them personally. And then throughout the course of the season, as a leader, I try to be really present. I show up, love to take pictures and feature our students on social media. I love to just give high fives after the games. I like to talk to the parents. So I just show up as much as I can and just take notes on that and ask the coaches how they're feeling about that. And I meet with the students, the captains every other week at lunch and get their feedback on things and how things are going. And So I'm just kind of learning a lot about the season and the experience. Mid-season, when I'm meeting with my captains, we have a specific called mid-season check-in, and we go through what do we keep doing in your season to keep it a positive experience? What do we need to start thinking about maybe slowing down or thinking about if we want to keep it or not? And then if there's a hard stop, let's talk about that too. But I always tell my captains if there's a red or a hard stop, they should have told me earlier. That meeting's too late. But usually there's no reds, or if there is a red, it's something like I don't like my uniforms this year or something, and we can fix that for the next year, which is good. If a uniform is my biggest problem, that's a good thing to have. So I talk about that. And then I bring that to my coaches and I said, hey, look, like, here's all the great things that your captain said about you. Here's how they describe their team culture. Is this the culture that you want to have perpetuated in your team? Is this what you wanted? And then I'll say, let's look at your goals. Let's see where we're at. And maybe the goals are let's win league, or maybe the goal is let's get to the third round of sections, or maybe the goals are I want to make sure that everyone has a good time. Like whatever those goals are, I said, how are we doing to meet those goals on a scale of 1 to 10? Where do you think we are right now? And then I always ask them the last question of that meeting is, what do you need from me to get your goals to 100%? And then we work on ways to do that. And it's a good opportunity too, because if a coach isn't meeting the mark or they're not doing things that we want them to do, it's a place where we can actually give them that feedback and make sure that it's in a place where we've written it down and everyone knows that's what's expected of them. So if it's a tough conversation, it's good to have mid-season and give them a chance to turn things around as well. And then I give a postseason survey to our students and I have them rate their experience. I have them rate how they felt like they gave a concerted effort and how respectful they were during the season, how their coaches were, how their athletic directors were, how their athletic trainers are. They're talking about their whole experience. When I did this at International, I had 98% of my high school students say that they had a positive experience in their sport. And so to have 98% of your high school students agree on anything, I think is a pretty big feat. So I was pretty excited about that. And so I would always give the coaches that feedback anonymously. I protect the students and give it to them anonymously. A lot of it is quantitative questions, but then some of it is qualitative. So it's really great that the coaches at their postseason meeting get this packet of, wow, look at all the things I did great. And then we start either, in most cases, hopefully planning for how we're going to get our next goals met next year. Or if they're not coming back for whatever reason, at least we have some data to point to why. And so that is not making my life more efficient, certainly, because meeting with all those people is very time consuming, but it makes the experience better for everyone. And if there is an issue mid-season, early in the season, I feel like those are my safety nets to catch them. And that's worked really well for me.
Can we drill down on your captain's group for a second, if you don't mind? I'd love to understand more about how it's laid out in regards to, is it just the fall sports? Is it one per team? Is it the all sports the whole year? What does that look like? How did you start it? How's it evolved? At an independent school, especially at a boarding school, time is at a premium. And last thing in the world I want to do is add more to the kids' plates. But talk through that a little bit in regards to what you've tried, where you landed on the final iteration, what worked, what didn't. Because it's been something I've been kicking around for a while, but I haven't pulled the trigger on it just from a standpoint of we've had a few starts and stops, but it hasn't taken off the way I would like.
Yeah, so I call it Captain Council at Castille because they love iterations with the letter C. At International, it's called Student Athlete Advisory Committee. And so that's honestly some of my favorite parts of the day or the week. And I really covet that time as an AD because, as much as I love spreadsheets and schedules and answering emails, that's not why I got into the job. I got into it to help make people even better people through sports. So I feel like really what I'm doing there matters and it's helpful for the students because sometimes in youth sports, we put students in a captain's role and they talk to the refs or the other team's captains and shake hands and they might start the group chat and make sure that there's a social media going for that team, but they're not really taught how to be an effective leader. They're just thrown into this role. They get the armband and it's very maybe they have leadership qualities in them, but like the captain's council was started so that we could first give them better tools to be a leader and be an effective leader because sometimes it's really hard when especially as a teenager it's really hard to be a leader and step into that role. So first and foremost is to give them the tools to lead effectively and efficiently. I also think it's a really good opportunity for them just to know that we're here. I always say, as a coach, the magic ratio is 6 to 1, six positive connections to one constructive. So if I do have to go hard on a team or on a group, that captain and I have already had a positive ratio. So I like that we have that positive connection. I also think that it's a great opportunity to work on skill or work on things like planning spirit days or the awards nights and stuff like that. So it has a lot of different purposes. So that's the purposes in that meeting. What happens, I've had some of the best meetings that I can think of is where the captains are actually learning from themselves. So they're talking about something that's been hard for them as a captain, and then they'll be like, gosh, I just can't get this team to respect me. And then the other captains will be like, I've tried this and this worked for me. And then I don't even have to say anything. I'm just letting them talk and then give each other feedback. And that's been really powerful. We've also not stuck to my game plan, and we've just talked about like hot buttons in sports, like what's going on in college sports right now, like why the transfer portal, like how interesting that is, how that might trickle down to high school sports, and also transgender athletes in sports. What does that mean for them participating in sports and actually being a part of it? So it's an opportunity for us to also connect and talk about things that are happening in the real world through sport and just get different opinions about that. I really valued those conversations. But nuts and bolts, how we do it is it's the captains of every team in season. And I do frosh off teams, JV teams. We had a club sailing and a club skiing team. They were invited too. And of course, the varsity captains are there. So it's grades 9 through 12 for the high school, and we get together every other week at lunch, and they just know that's part of being a captain. That's your commitment. And of course things happen, maybe they have a college counseling meeting or whatever, and we can move around that. But if they miss it more than a couple times in season, then maybe their captainship might be taken away. That's a big part of it here, and I hold that line pretty strongly. And at my previous school, we would bring everyone together at the end of the year to meet to discuss the awards night, because that was like the SBs at my previous school. It was a big deal. We had the red carpet and a huge stage, and it was an event for 450 people. So we needed our captain's council to be all hands on deck to help us create that. And it was really student led. Like, they're the MCs in the night, they're the ones that are speaking on the stage. It was really fun to plan that with such a big group. And because they were planning it, I feel like our attendance also was really high, because they had that IKEA effect, that buy-in effect of, hey, everyone, like, I'm speaking at the awards night, so you have to come and be there to support me. And because it was kids driven and they had that time and space together to collaborate, I feel like it was really nice and we got that buy-in. I love it. I'm happy to talk to you more offline about it and give you some of my materials if you want it. But it's something I love. And when I came in day one, I was like, I must do this. I already have all the schedules on the board. Like, they're ready to go.
No, that's super helpful. I do want to talk to you more about that afterwards. That's neat, the SB idea, and that how that's helped attendance at those things where it's kid driven, as always. So let me wrap with this. What is something you've most recently changed your mind on? And the way I always frame this question is, in the polarization of the world that we currently live in, most people are not seeing a whole lot of dissenting opinion anymore, and or dissenting voice. And so I'm always curious how we're maintaining a growth mindset and challenging our belief system in a world in which that doesn't seem to be valued anymore. It doesn't have to be sports related. It can be about anything, but I'm always curious what's something where I used to be over here and now I'm over here, and here's why.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good question. I am here at my new job, so I'm learning new things all the time, and leaning into the fact that I didn't create the processes that are here, and it's not, I didn't put my stamp on a lot of things. And when I was interviewing, the parents were part of my interview process, and they were part of the AD interview process, and that told me that the parents were really involved in this community, which I think can be a superpower. But I was nervous about that. And I was nervous about the fact that at Casti, they have parents that are coaches. And I've never had that at a school before, like, ever, not even fourth grade C team. It wasn't something that I ever would lean into or do. And that is the culture here. And so I came in, oh, I don't know about that. I might change that. But I will say, in my first month, we'll see how it goes. Maybe you'll have to do an update in a year. But as of now, I feel like it's actually really awesome, because first of all, having that parent voice is really powerful, and listening to that parent voice and knowing that they understand both sides to the coin of being a parent and also being a coach, and seeing what we're doing behind the scenes, I think is actually like really, really awesome. And for us, and an extension of our voice. And so I've really appreciated getting to know the parents in that light while they're on the field and when they're behind the scenes as the parents. And so having that role be there is that changed my mind. I now am like, okay, I don't think that is something that I would immediately do away with, or that's not something that I'm nervous about anymore so far. It's something that I'm leaning into it and I'm using them as a resource and as a value. And I think I changed my mind pretty quickly on that. Happy about that.
Cool. That's great. And I'm actually more curious as you go through the year how you continue to do that, because I think ultimately the whole reason I asked that is partially selfishly for myself so I can get some dissenting opinion on things, but also just a matter of how are we intentionally challenging our belief system rather than being forced to when things didn't go our way, right? And so I think that's my biggest takeaway from even coming across that question years ago, and I've learned a ton asking it. Hopefully, you start taking some notes on things that are, whoa, you know what? Maybe I should think about this, because those are the things that come across our desk all the time. Appreciate you taking the time. Looking forward to seeing you in person throughout the course of the year, and let me know how things are going and if there's anything I can do to help you.
Thank you so much. Sam, I'm looking forward to working closely with you.